NPR's Top Pros Talk, taking chances in your career, featuring Diana Bassett, president of Diana Bassett Public Relations. And here's your host, Doug Simon.
Diana, congratulations on having your agency for 2.5 years. And you've talked about how networking has been a key part for you. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Networking has always been something that I knew was a great way to branch out, to grow your career, but I never really witnessed it until I got into public relations. Prior to being public relations, I worked in film. That's what my undergrad degree was in. I was working as a PA on different film sets, and it just wasn't clicking for me. It wasn't where I wanted to end up. So I quit that world, and I was like, I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. I was very confused. I had never heard of PR, didn't think it'd be something that would be in my future. And a friend of mine was like, you should come out to a bar with me tonight. And I was like, listen, I'm unemployed right now. Like, not a good idea. I should not be going out to a bar. And she's like, trust me, just come. And I pushed back so much because I was like, I need to be a responsible adult, in my early to mid 20s, responsible adult. But I was like, I need to be responsible. I shouldn't be spending money. And she just kept pushing me. And I'm like, you know what? You're not going to leave me alone. I'm going to go. She's like, oh, and another friend from college is coming as well. So I'm like, okay, cool. I meet this guy and he was like, you should be a publicist. And I was like, I don't know what that is. He's like, you have the personality for it. There's something about you. You can be a really good publicist. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'll look into it. And he was like, well, my sister actually owns a company and she's branching out from a one-person company and hiring, and I'm working with her and I'd like to hire you. And basically I had a job as a publicist by the end of that night. So I always say to myself, if I didn't go that night, who knows where I'd be, what career I'd be in, what industry, how long I would have been unemployed for, what my passions would have been. So my theory for everyone is go out, talk to people, do things, because you never know who you're going to meet, and that can change the entire course of your life.
A new tip for LinkedIn and for people watching, maybe go out to a bar instead if you're looking to build your career. It's usually not the way people go, but here you go. You made it work for you. So how did you know when it was time to start your own company?
I was interviewing at different companies and they were all like, hey, this thing's going on right now, so we're just kind of putting this job on hold, but we do really like you. We'd like to hire you. Give us like 2-3 weeks to get through whatever this is, and then we'll be back in touch with you. I'm like, okay, cool. And then, of course, 2-3 weeks go by, and the pandemic did not end in 2 weeks. So yes. I was just kind of like getting antsy, and it was, the end of March, needed something to do. And I was like, I want to help people. Like, you hear so many amazing stories of people doing things. So I started reaching out to a bunch of charities, and they were like, we need people who will go into people's houses. I want to help, but I also don't want to put myself in danger. So I was like, I need to do something from home. And there really weren't any charities that I could work with. So I was like, what am I good at? I'm good at PR. So that's what I started doing. I started reaching out to people, seeing what I could do. Specifically, I worked with a waxing salon in Minnesota that had opened their doors in January and then had to close in March, and things were kind of crazy for them. So I helped them just develop their social media presence. I reached out to some influencers in Minnesota, and which was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life, finding fashion and retail and lifestyle influencers who live in Minnesota. Usually I work with New York City ones, and asked them if they would be interested in doing giveaways with a closed salon right now. And they were interested. And I said, and then after the salon opens up, we want you to come in. You can do, free services, talk about it with your followers. And that's exactly what happened. And they, the count on social media kept growing and growing and growing. These influencers all became long-term clients of the salon. She's so booked now that she can't take new clients. And I realized, while I was doing all that, how much I loved working for myself. That I felt I was a better publicist, because not that I didn't like all the checks and balances of working with a team, because I think that's great. And that is something I'm missing. I just kept kind of going, helping more people. And then one night I had a couple of glasses of wine. I wake my husband. I'm like, I just bought a domain. And this was April. And he was like, it's about time. Like, I thought he was going to be like, you're crazy. Like, you're going to go back to work for somebody else. And it was just, it's about time. And I told them my family, and they were all like, yeah, we knew this was coming. We knew that you were going to start your own company for years. And I kept arguing for years. I was never going to start my own company. It was not something I wanted to do. But apparently everyone else knew it was.
Do you have any methods, advice about how you choose clients to work with? Obviously, you go after them in a very creative and personal way, which is important.
So my first client I had with my company, official client, was Nikki Blonsky. She played Tracy in the movie Hairspray. And the reason why she was my first client is because she was a friend of mine since elementary school. So the day I created the domain, in normal hours, not in the middle of the night, I reached out to her and I was like, hey, do you have a publicist right now? I'm starting my own company. And she's like, no, I actually don't. I'm like, cool, I'm your publicist. And we just started from there. She introduced me to a nonprofit who was doing a show to raise money for out of work actors who weren't also able, who a lot of them were subsidizing their careers as waiters, and all the restaurants were closed. So they really were losing salary on both sides and unable to support themselves and their families. So they were raising money for them. So I volunteered my time to work with them. Since pro bono work is something I'm very passionate about, it's obviously how I got my job started, doing free work for people. So they just kind of kept growing from there. They recommended me to other people, and everybody that I've worked with at this point has been a referral. I don't advertise. I don't reach out to people. I don't cold call. Every single person since I started with Nikki has come to me, which has been kind of amazing that I've gotten my name out there just by doing the work. And a lot of it was free work. I was doing free work for a lot of people for that first year because I felt it was easier to build my own credibility and my own name. And by the end of the first year, I had my first big paying client, which was a shoe brand. And that's because they saw me on LinkedIn and they were like, hey, we came across some of the press you've been doing. We're launching our brand. Is this something you're passionate about? And their name is Stella Terra Shoes. I realized I only have to work with people I'm passionate about. I only need to team up with people who I feel excited about, because I feel if I'm not excited about them, I have no right to be taking their money and telling other people that should be excited about them. It needs to be a mutual interest in each other.
I want to get in a little bit about mentorship, because you put effort into mentoring younger people on that, which is a cool thing. I try and do that as well. Of course, I've got a much wider group to work with than you do in that. But what is the impact of that for you?
When I met with the owner of the first PR company that I worked with, I knew nothing about PR. I told her I knew nothing about PR. And she was like, you'll learn, I'll teach you. And she did. She taught me everything I know today. The fact that she would sit with me at the desk and let me watch her do her phone calls, watch her send emails. And then within a week, she sent me off to do it myself. She was willing to let me fail to get better. And I was not great in the beginning. I definitely failed. There were errors, there were mistakes. And she never fired me over it. She never yelled at me. She was like, well, what can you learn from it? And I'm only successful today because of her. And I'm very grateful to that. So I want to be able to give that back to the next generation of PR professionals.
I was going to ask, how do you go about creating a safe space for people who want to learn and grow?
So I have an internship program, and I say it's basically more of a mentorship program. I don't want people getting coffee. I don't want people, doing tedious jobs that are not necessary for the day-to-day. I always tell them, of course, there's going to be tedious things. I'm doing tedious things at times too. That's the life. But it's not for the sake of doing things for busy work. You're doing it because it needs to be done. So what I tell them is, listen, you've never done this before. You're not going to be good at it. I don't expect you to be good at it. You're here to learn how to do it. Doing things that you're doing in the classroom for real people, but without that being scared and fear of screwing up and getting fired on your first day because you've never done it. If you've never done it, how can you do it?
That's really great. I mean, it's a wonderful story that you have. Any other advice for people who maybe might become, I guess I wouldn't call you an accidental entrepreneur because you sort of wanted to do that, but you were sort of a circumstantial entrepreneur. Any advice for people who might be thinking, everyone sort of assumes, and just, I was in the same boat when I started. It wasn't like, okay, I've got to have this plan and get started. Any ideas for people who might become accidental entrepreneurs due to circumstance?
Lean into it. I mean, there's going to be really scary days. You have no idea what you're doing. You're thinking, oh my God, why did I think I could do this? The imposter syndrome is going to hit you so hard, but keep going because everyone feels that way. And I have such imposter syndrome, and I know everyone has it. And that's what I have to remind
Mhm.
myself. When I'm around other people and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in the same room as these people. I can't believe I'm doing work that's going to be shown nationally and all of this. I remind myself that everyone else in the room is having the same feelings as I'm feeling.
Mhm.
And don't let that stop you, because it didn't stop them. It's not stopping me. Just go and allow yourself to have a 5-minute freak out. Sometimes those are the healthiest things you can do, but only 5 minutes, because then you have to get back to it and keep moving forward.
Thanks for sharing your wisdom on our show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. This is very exciting.